founders, it's Christy Bareijsza, and I'm your catalyst to finding her. Let's get started. Hey founders, welcome to Finding Her. As you know, my name is Christy Bareijsza, and I am not a life coach. I am not a therapist. Hell, I am not a psychologist. I am just an average woman in her 40s. Just trying to find my way. I've experienced both personal and professional challenges that have landed me in places I never thought I'd be at this point in my life. But, you know, it's one of those things that I'll continue to make mistakes and keep trying to make more because, once again, that's what makes life interesting. And honestly, it's what makes great stories. So here we are. But don't forget, I will be telling these relatable stories from my experience and my perspective. So names will always be changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. But, you know, as we always do, I'm making a very, very long story short. And, you know, what I am more than anything else is a catalyst for change. And I'm here to help you navigate through some of life's challenges. And, you know, we just talk about it. Okay, founders. So as we're going through each topic, I'm going to give you a little brief reminder of what we did last week. So the first episode, we did talk about starting over. And last week, we talked about forgiveness, which is, for me personally, something really, really hard to move past and move through. But there's a few critical points I just want to give you a quick reminder of. And, you know, just a little bit refresher, because that leads into the next chapter that we have, which is your favorite of mine, accountability. But going back to forgiveness, let's talk about a few key points that I want to just reemphasize, which, number one, freedom only comes when you choose to forgive yourself and others. So if you can't do it on your own and you can't feel through it, it's going to be hard for you to do it for others. So, you know, that's always just such a critical step in just the tip of the iceberg. You know, number two, take a moment to properly mourn the past and then move on. So, you know, giving something a funeral is pretty real. It's you know, we joke about it, but, you know, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a situation that was really disappointing, if you give it that proper funeral, it's just kind of a way to, you know, I mean, and you can go big or small. You know, you could do a whole funeral like you would traditionally for a person, or you could do it in a way that's more of a, you know, in theory, funeral. But whatever the case is, however you want to emphasize it, make sure that you mourn that loss so you can move on. Always be thankful for the lessons learned, as you are at a pivotal moment in the point of your life because of them. So, you know, every situation, especially a disappointing one or one that doesn't turn out the way that we would want it to turn out, has that moment where you feel lost, disappointed, you know, defeated, whatever the case is. And you got to look at that lesson and you got to understand where that value is in that situation, and it's going to help you move on. Eliminate the victimization. As we know, shit happens to everyone, but you have to find the silver lining and be grateful for the positives of that situation that may have been more negative. So with that, you know, always make sure that you are not walking around saying, okay, this is why did this happen to me? And why did it do? And why? And oh, woe is me. You got to take accountability. You have to understand that this was something that happened, and you're going to own it. You're going to address it, and you're going to move forward. Create tools to replace anger and fear with drive and inspiration. So understand that whatever caused you to be in that moment where you're going to need to look deep inside yourself to forgive, those kind of pieces of hurt are going to propel you to the next step, because those if you can take that hurt and transition that into something that's going to propel you into the next phase, that's where it's critical, where it's not about saying, oh, this happened to me because of this, or I'm sad because of that. Yes, you can be sad, but you also have to pick the pieces up and figure out the best way to move forward where it makes sense. And not move forward in a way that's petty or that's karmic in the sense where you're creating your own karma, because karma will do her own work. She does not need help. But it's one of those things to say, okay, how am I going to move forward? And how is this lesson or how is this situation going to not present itself again in my life? So what am I going to do different? And also, too, setting an example of your strength to your children, your family, and your friends. Because by you being able to address this, move forward, forgive, sometimes forget. And sometimes, too, when I say forgetting, it's not necessarily about, just thinking as though it never happened or sweeping it under the rug. It's more about choosing to move forward. And sometimes when you have to choose to move forward, sometimes it's a situation that may not always make sense at that moment, but sometimes it's better to just say, this is what it is, and I'm going to move forward and release it, because you're just only stressing yourself out. You're only, it's that same phase of drinking the poison to watch the other person die. Like it's one of those things where you need to do it for yourself, and you will set an example for others by having that strength to do so. So those are those critical steps with forgiveness. So when you finally get to that point where you can forgive what happened, whether it was a marriage that went wrong, an infidelity, losing your job, being done, someone doing you dirty, like a friend, betraying your trust. I mean, it could be something on a scale that can be something more minor to something major and happening that really impacts, multiple aspects of your life, where it might not just be your career, it might be your livelihood, it might be your family, your friends, whatever the case is. There's so many things that can happen that forgiveness needs to be kind of dealt with. And when you get to that point of being able to forgive, you get to the next step, which is accountability. So, you guys, I'm already going to start with a quote because that's now become my thing. So let me clear my throat. Ready? You cannot practice non-attachment. You can only show your mind the suffering attachment creates. When the mind sees this clearly, it will let it go. All right, think about that. So, honestly, the path of freedom is accountability. Because if you attach yourself to the same type of scenario, thought process, whatever it is, the same actions that you do over and over and over again, all you will do is continue to suffer. You will relive that scenario over again. You will recreate that scenario over again, where you're going nowhere. You're literally spinning it's a hamster wheel, and you're spinning your wheels over and over and over again. And with that, if you cannot change your mindset to look at things differently and understand the decisions that you made or the habits that you've kind of, continue to do is part of this issue, it's never going to change. So if you want to move forward and free yourself of that hurt or free yourself of that situation, you have to figure out what your responsibility is in this. And that's hard because it's one of those things where people don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to feel as though it was their fault. They don't want to feel like, it's so much easier to say, this happened to me because of the clouds parted, the universe, this, that, whatever excuse, you turn left instead of right. And that's one of those things where it's usually not that, unfortunately. We are in control of our own destiny. We are in control of our own circumstances. And we have the opportunity to make a difference, to make a change. So if you don't look at something from that perspective, you'll never be accountable. And it's so easy to fall into that victim mentality. And with that victim mentality, it just becomes, it's the excuse for everything. And that's where that has to stop. That shit ends here. Like, I am drawing that line in the sand. So if you cannot be accountable for your own actions, just press stop, because we're good. Now, if you can and understand that we are not perfect, we continue to make mistakes, and that is part of growing, and that's part of life, then we're going to continue ahead, because being accountable is the path less taken. And it's one of the reasons why I started this journey of finding her, because it's something that I could have, like I said, that last 10 years of my life, this last decade has been moving. It has been marriage, a divorce, broken relationships, a business that fell apart. And some of it, listen, when my business fell apart, I am in an industry that's it's event planning. So it's a face-to-face industry. It's something that thrives on human interaction. When the pandemic happened, I could have, spiraled into, well, the pandemic ruined my business. Like it was literally out of my control. But I could have just spent the last 2 years of my life sleeping and doing other things, or I could redevelop my business and look at it and say, okay, you know what? Now I have the opportunity to, I have the time, I have the opportunity to look at it and say, okay, this has worked for the last few years. This has not worked. This has protected me when I've gone through, post 9/11 with the industry changing. I'd gone through the financial crisis, especially in New York City, where it was, highly impacted as far as from an event standpoint, because so many financial companies went under, and there was just not the budgets for meetings and conferences and things that are supported by different industries that were basically, defunct. So with the pandemic, I didn't have that opportunity to kind of maneuver and change maybe a marketing aspect of it, because I couldn't take a different region and kind of focus on that, because everything was shut down globally. So with that, I could have, just did nothing, or I could have turned around and said, okay, where's my mistakes? Where can I fix things? How can I fix this? And how am I going to survive? So with that, I looked deep inside and started dealing with different different administrative tasks, different, kind of marketing and branding, where it just wasn't necessarily about, oh, I'm going to go to virtual, or I'm going to do this and that, because it really wasn't what was going to work. And also at that point too, we didn't know how long this pandemic was going to last. So it could have been 6 months, it could have been 6 weeks, it could have been 6 days, it could have been 6 years. We didn't know. So where did I look inside, and where did I look deep into myself and say, okay, well, what do I love to do? I'm creative. So I started looking at things. I started writing TV shows. I started redeveloping my business and expanding services that may or may not be applicable when this whole pandemic was over, where I started understanding regions, looking at statistics, looking at things that may protect me and protect the downside if something like this was to happen again. But with that, I never said this happened to me and my industry sucks and this and that. It was never that. It was like, okay, I have been presented with this problem. How am I going to fix it? And how am I going to fix it in a way that still brings inspiration, that still brings creativity? It brought frustration at times. And also, too, I throw a lot of shit at the wall. And I still do that. I continue to throw shit at the wall just to see what sticks, because you never know. Sometimes it does. And the positive side about that, and as I always say, you have to look at the silver lining, is that when you look at that and you say, okay, I now have the time to do that. Where in the last decade plus, because I was always at the mercy of doing events or timelines and different things that were a bit out of my control, because, I'm in an industry that basically relies on other people's schedules and timelines, that I had the luxury of time, which was a great thing to have, to really think through and be strategic. So that's part of it, in understanding how I can do my share to make a difference. So, we want to talk about how to maneuver through this. And it's not easy to kind of go through all the things that you went wrong, like that you've done wrong, without spiraling. Because you don't want to beat up on yourself in the sense of being like, well, I did this, and this is why my life is shit. Or this is all the things that happened in my relationship, and this is why everything fell apart. That's not the answer, and that's not what I'm saying to do. What I'm saying to do is you have to almost look at things in a bigger picture and almost in a way that is kind of black and white in the sense of, this happened, or like I got, and kind of backtrack it, where I got divorced. Okay, well, what led to that divorce? What led to this? And kind of backtrack those things where it's not necessarily personal. It's more that generalization of really kind of saying, okay, this was the outcome. Here's all the steps that kind of led to it, which some might be good, some might be bad, because those steps may have not kind of all been in a negative, kind of swoop down. It may have been you took a couple steps back, you took 2 steps forward, you took a step sideways, you stayed kind of, stagnant for a bit, and kind of understand what it was and what could have been changed to kind of do better for your best and highest self. Meaning you may have made decisions based on that other person's feelings, whether it's a business partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's a partner, whether it was a family member, whatever those things were, but understand what happened negatively and how it was fixed, and whether that fixing was a Band-Aid or that fixing was something that was a true fix, and analyze where you are now. And what you also need to do when you're doing that is not compare yourself to others, because, we've talked about this before, where what people do, what people say, how they project themselves online, how they basically present themselves isn't always reality. So with that being said, you kind of have to take this journey of accountability and just look inside yourself and look at you as a person, and then the surrounding people that are impacted by that, but in a way that you're driving that impact, if that makes sense. With that, you really have to declutter your mind and center your focus, because if you start dealing with the noise, the opinions, things like that, that's going to sway your place in it. Because, depending on the type of friend, or depending on the type of colleague, or depending on, the type of family member you have around you, there's different coddling. So I happen to come from a family that, even as a kid, if I ever got in trouble at school, it was never, my daughter didn't do it. It was, what did you do? And even at 47 years old, it's still, what did you do? Even when I got divorced, it was never his fault. It was, well, what did you do? It was my fault. And I come from that, which the ironic part about it is that I am always told in my family that I'm never accountable for anything, which is years of therapy. But understanding I am accountable, that's where you truly have to silence the noise, and you have to kind of center your focus. Because if you start relying on your decisions that are impacted or influenced by other people around you, it's not, you're not going to get to the core of it. And that's something that's so critical, where you have to be extremely introspective. And like I said, I am a big advocate of writing things down. And just because for me visually, I tend to see things better if I can kind of look at it, touch it, work through it. And that also often helps, because it also too, as I'm looking at different things, I may not relate them in my mind, but all of a sudden on paper, I start relating to what the connections are to where I ended up, where I did, and what I did to create that kind of forward motion. So by decluttering and kind of getting those things on paper and kind of understanding that you're kind of working this through yourself, it's going to help you become a bit more accountable. Because and also too, for me, I understand, my mind, works like New York City. So I could be sitting here thinking of something and, there's a fire truck going by, there's a subway, there's someone fighting in the street, there's a police siren, there's, I don't know, taxi, there's nonstop action going on in my brain. And even right now when I'm talking to you about this, I'm thinking about 42 other things that I need to do, which is just how I work. But from an accountability standpoint, I may be missing major factors that have led me to this point of having to start over, having to forgive, and having to understand that I am now at this point where I have to fix something internally. So what am I fixing? So with that, you kind of have to create a direction and create pretty much a roadmap that's going to help mold the success of getting through this. So, for instance, if I got fired from a job, which yes, I've been fired from a lot of them. That's a whole other story. And they're actually pretty funny stories because, with that, there's some jobs I've been fired from and got a new job the next day. And it speaks volumes about reputation and things like that. But it's also one of those things, too, where I'd be like, shit. Happened again, where it almost became comical. I mean, listen, I worked for my father for years. He would fire me every day. I would always get fired there too. So it's like, it's not even a big deal anymore. It's actually kind of funny when it happens. I'm usually surprised when it doesn't. But anyway, I digress. So you got to find that roadmap. Understanding what went wrong, where you are, and where you need to be is something that is kind of, it's a realistic understanding without it being emotional. So that being said, it's like you want to basically center yourself and understand, where you are now and where you think you need to be. So in the event that you did you did lose your job for whatever case it is, do you really want to go back into that same career? Do you really want to get another job and put a Band-Aid on a situation? Do you want to better yourself? Do you want to kind of take that opportunity to redirect yourself, build some more skills? If you're in a situation where you're getting divorced, the instant response shouldn't be to get married again. Instantly. Like, I'm going to fix this and this is what I'm going to do. I like being married. I like this. I like that. And I'm going to do this. And whoever fits in that spot is going to be the person that I'm doing that with. That's not what you need to do. What you need to do is understand who you are, what you want, and how you're going to move forward. So in the event that you do get married again, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, and I'm not saying that each journey is different. What I am saying is you're getting married for the right reasons. You're building yourself as a whole person again to be a better partner, to be a better, lover, to be a better friend, to be all these better things that you've learned those lessons of not making those same mistakes twice. Because if you just instantly go back into whatever has hurt you or whatever has caused you strife and just try to make it a quick fix without delving deep into the understanding and the understanding and the kind of the mechanical aspects that went into leading you to this point, that's where you're going to see the difference of how to work through them and how to fix that. So one of the things that has kind of worked for me when I'm trying to find what I really want to do is I kind of go back and I speak to my younger self. Like if I could talk to myself in high school, or I could talk to myself at 10 years old, or I could talk to myself in college, depending on what that is, and remember where I was at that moment, where was my inspiration? What were my dreams? What were the things that I was looking forward to that may have not happened because life got in the way? So with that, it's kind of, and life meaning, you have to make money, jobs, careers, kids, family, marriage, divorce, any of those things, whatever happened on your journey, going back to a pivotal moment in your younger life and saying, what made me tick? And what could I tell that little girl or that young woman that would make a difference to where I am now. Because that woman now is what that younger girl is counting on. As far as the growth, the experience, the understanding, just the development of your emotions and your intellect and who you are. So you want to kind of get to that point where you can look back and sometimes that'll end up triggering something deep down inside that might be a subconscious thing that will all of a sudden help you heal. And it's crazy to think of it that way, but it's almost tricking your mind to not think in the same way that you normally would in a crisis situation and look at it differently and say, okay, what would I have done then? Or what would I have done? And it might change your perspective because you're not getting the influence of someone else. You're getting the influence of yourself. You're just forgetting different things that you may have learned across, the years of that you've had in life that will trigger different ways of thinking. And it's kind of, it's a different it's a different concept to getting to the point of really feeling like, you're not beating up on yourself. You're not being dismissive to yourself. You're not hurting yourself or fighting into, your self-esteem. You're just saying, okay, this happened. This is life. This is where I am now. This is where I really need to be. Not where I'm going to be, not where I am now. It's where I really need to be. And, uncovering the tools to your path requires, things from education to different skills and things like that. So once you get to the point where you're understanding the direction that you need to go, it never hurts to seek help, whether it is from a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a confidant, where once you start developing those ideas and you feel more strongly about them, where they're not being influenced by others, it is great to reach out. Because if there's certain goals that you've created or there's certain things that you want to do with these next steps, because once again, it's an exciting time in your life, because even though it looks and feels like things are falling apart, things are actually falling together. And this new chapter is starting in a way that's pretty fucking magical. And when it's magical and it's unique and it's different and it's new, it's fucking scary. Okay? So we got that. And that's where your accountability sets in to say, okay, this is what I've been, these are the cards that I've been given. Now I'm going to deal with them. And with that, having those resources which are available to educate yourself, whether it's a new skill, whether it's a deeper understanding from a medical professional, whether it's a deeper understanding of what your options are, or doing a deep dive and research in something that you want to kind of, if it's a new career that you want to experience, or it's a new life, or it's a new location, maybe, some people sometimes with times, or feelings, which I've done myself, is I've upped and moved. And it's not that I'm running away, because I'm not. It's just sometimes when you've lived in different areas, or you've built your business, or you've built your reputation, or you've built your life in certain areas, sometimes it gets stagnant, or sometimes it's served its purpose and your lessons have been learned there, and it's time for new lessons, which sometimes an environmental change is something that is very real, and people do that a lot. So, it's those different opportunities of really kind of researching and building your skills to support you in your next step, in your next phase of your life, and the next phase of this healing process. And, what that process looks like, who knows? I mean, like I said, I've told stories about me where I am one to go on my gut. And I am one to, because I've gone through this, but believe that when things happen, they happen for a reason. And I need to understand what that reason is, which I don't always see right away. I don't always look at it and overnight it's magically, this is what it is sometimes. But ironically, too, it does come to me sometimes in a dream, or it comes to me in an odd kind of situation, or a coincidence or any kind of other thing where, someone might be saying something or I overhear something. I am one to always keep my mind open to those positive influences to help me navigate through. But with that, when it's not so on that higher level, there's, with the internet, plenty of resources. You can Google anything. You can literally Google anything. And there are some good and some bad. I always recommend that you stick to the facts and you stick to resources that are factual versus blogs and more of that influential type thing. But, I will also share on our pages different resources based on if it's career, based on if it's an emotional relationship, based on if it's starting your life over, based on if it's moving, just different things like that will help you kind of make better decisions and take accountability for your own life and current circumstances that have led you to these next steps versus turning around and relying on somebody else, being a victim, saying, why me? This happened to me. This is not, everything always happens. Woe is me. No, that shit stops here. We don't do that here. And that's something that a lot of women tend to identify with. And they tend to identify with it in a way that is not sexy. I don't think it's sexy. But in the different regions that I've lived in, I've also seen their partners or people in their lives that tend to support that behavior, and that's not what we're doing here. It's not about being a victim. It's not about circumstance. Like I said, shit happens to everyone. It's how you address it, how you move through it, and how you fix it. Otherwise, you're just recreating the same thing over and over again. And with that, you have to see the big picture, and you got to mitigate those obstacles. And that's not so easy to do because when you're in it, you're almost looking at it sometimes like, I do this with my business a lot. I will look at my business, and because I'm into it day to day, I look at it so close that sometimes I don't see the big picture. And it could be staring at me just right in front of me, and I am missing it completely. And with that, I tend to, have advisors. I tend to have a few colleagues that I can kind of speak to that really understand in a way that is impartial, non-biased. They're going to shoot straight with me. I do have a series of advisors that when I'm banging my head against that wall trying to figure out why I can't fix that problem, I don't go to the victim side. I tend to go and say, okay, I can't see it. Maybe someone else can help me see it to allow me the skills and the tools necessary to work through it. So seeing that big picture, it takes the emotion out of the situation, which a lot of times these kind of, needs to start over and these needs to forgive those that have done us wrong or those we have done wrong. You're seeing it from a very, very much a tunnel vision. And it's something that you have to look at it from a different perspective, which is not easy to do. And sometimes you need those experts to help you do that. And that's okay. And that's a good thing. Because the fact that you're reaching out, the fact that you're doing the research, the fact that you're looking deeper into it, you're halfway there. And that's super important. So, you want to source and leverage your resources through innovation. So you almost have to look at things, especially being accountable, you almost have to look at it differently. Because a lot of times people will look at it as surface value. And that's something that you can't do. You can't just look at something and just be like, this happened this way and this is what it is and this is the way I see it. There's multiple perspectives. There's multiple angles. There's multiple aspects. So sometimes it helps to kind of backtrack the way that you think and kind of change your perspective on it, where you may have looked at it from A to B to C to D the first way. This time, look at it from D to C to B to A. Side note, if I ever had to do the alphabet backwards, I'd fail instantly. But I digress. But anyway, it's one of those things that if you look at something differently and from a different perspective, you may see a new way to a solution. And you may see a new way or something that you may have done that triggered this outcome. Good, bad, and different, it's a learning lesson. And you can't beat yourself up about it. But understand that it's going to allow you the opportunity to make a difference and maybe not make that same mistake twice, which is a great thing to have. So, another thing is you want to break the cycle of allowing failure to be an option and requiring friends and families to hold you to your deadlines. So with accountability, you not only have to be accountable to yourself, but you should also, for some people, need to be accountable to others. Because change doesn't happen overnight, but change does happen through time, and change happens daily. So when you think about that, it's one of those things that it's never too late to start. It doesn't have to be you wake up the next morning, because if you have to wake up the morning and start the next day, you're never going to start. If you try to do things in a way that are, I'm going to change this, but I'm not going to change that, or I'm going to modify it this way or do this, you got to be held accountable, literally. So if you can't hold yourself accountable, then you have to ask for a person that you can trust that can also hold you accountable to those deadlines, to those timelines, where you don't start falling into old habits and allow life to get in the way, once again, of doing things where you are falling just back into old habits, or you're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, or you're also doing things where it becomes easier because it's not so scary and it's not so painful and it's not so real. Because a lot of times what we will do is fall really back into that victim mentality in a way that's kind of like, life happened, we're going to skim over it. No, we're going to dive deep into it. And you're going to be held accountable. You're going to have a plan. And you're going to get through these next steps of your chapter, whatever they may be, whether it's finding ways to start dating again, finding, a new job, honing in your skills, learning what happened, learning not to do that again, learning how to make yourself a better person in a way where you feel more secure, more whole. Your self-esteem is rebuilt, where you feel good about yourself and know your value in a way that you are confident, once again, to take those next steps. And that comes with, just breaking that cycle of just accepting failure, accepting that this is happening, accepting that life sucks and this and that and all this other stuff. It's all about perspective. And when you look at things in a way that changes your perspective, you're able to come up with more realistic solutions that you're going to have a better success rate of sticking to, which is really, really important. And the thing is, too, you have to silence that chatter. There's a fine line between relying on friends and family and colleagues that are here to support you, and ones that you're used to having in your lives that might not be supporting you in a way that is positive, especially at this point in your life where it's a very vulnerable time. It is a very difficult time. It's a very frustrating time. It's a time that could be depressing. And you need people in your life that are going to support you in a way that is going to uplift you, keep you accountable, keep you moving forward, even though that forward movement may not always continue to be forward, because you will take a few steps forward. You may take a few steps back, but then you're going to continue to move forward if you're doing things right. And that's that accountability, those timelines, those deadlines of understanding that life is short. As we always talk about, life is not promised. So you need to use that day, that moment, that second that you have in a way that's so strategic, and surrounding yourself with support that is going to help you kind of, work through those strategies to ensure that you are being successful in the next part of your journey, which is so critical. And with that, it's kind of seeing that bigger picture, writing down those different aspects that are going to get you to where you need to be successful. And that success may not be this outwardly success. It might be something very small. It might be unique. It might be something that is of just this minute thing that people aren't even going to see. But that's still success. And that's still part of your journey, because not every aspect of your journey is going to be something that is this big grandeur of things. That's like, look at me, look at this, look at that. Because, even with social media now, everybody's always on this bigger, better, faster, this overwhelming, overemphasized thing. Sometimes the most important success is something so, so small. And you have to look at it that way. And you have to understand that that is also part of life. And that's for you. And with that, silence that chatter, keep that focus, and get to that point where you understand that this isn't something that's going to get better tomorrow. It's not going to get better in 1 day, 1 minute, 1 year. It's going to be something that's going to gradually get better. And each time you kind of take that forward movement, you're also going to understand that you are growing as a person, you're growing as an individual, and you're building a different type of values and strengths inside of you that is going to help you, in future situations. And that's pretty fucking cool. So anyway, so I reached out to my founders, our community, and, I asked, if anybody had some questions or thoughts on accountability. And one question that came up, which I thought was pretty profound, was that why do you often see so many using devious pride as a form of accountability? I mean, it actually made my head spin a little bit. And, I just kind of wanted to break down that question. So first thing I did by breaking down is I took the definition of devious and kind of took it into play of where it would kind of impact accountability. So obviously the definition is someone who has plans or methods that are dishonest, often in a complicated way, but often also smart and successful. So it's kind of the society that we've been in right now where it's that fake it till you make it. And it's a hard thing for me because I understand as I make decisions in life, I really try to see all angles of it. And I think there's a difference in how it's used. And sometimes it's used as a crutch to kind of not have that accountability. And sometimes it's used in a way where it's a mindset. And it's used in a mindset to help kind of keep that positivity and kind of that forward thinking of looking at the silver lining. So unfortunately, the vast majority use it as that fake it to make it situation where you might see someone I always use this example, on social media standing in front of a luxury car, a Bentley. It's not their car, but they're standing in front of it. And they're taking a picture of it like it is to show this kind of impression that they have achieved wealth or they have achieved success or whatever the case is. That is not what we're talking about. And that is not something that I would ever condone, because the person that has worked very hard for that car is probably inside continuing to work. And it's not that they can't do something that's very nice for themselves or buying luxury cars or doing things that make them happy, because you know what? When you've earned your success and you've earned it wholeheartedly, you want to do things that make you happy. And whatever those things are, you go right ahead and do it, because you've earned the right to do that. But also having that fake it till you make it mindset where you do understand that silver lining of getting out of your own way to not necessarily be like, I'm here, I need to get here, I don't know how to get there, I don't know the steps to take, I don't know, I can't do it. That's not what you're going to do. That's where that kind of mentality comes in, where it's a little bit of education, it's a little bit of honing in your skills, it's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of blind faith in yourself. So if we can use the term fake it till you make it in a way that you're putting blind faith in yourself while you're doing the work to get to those next steps, that is going to take away that victim mentality, that they have this one has this, that competitive nature of trying to compete with something that is not who you are inside, and taking those next steps in a way that are going to allow you to succeed. Because, living in a state of deep denial is not going to help. You need to you need to believe in yourself. And you need to believe that, having the right skill set and being responsible to yourself is going to allow you to grow. It's going to allow you to expand, whether it's, emotionally, physically, professionally. Those are those things that are going to take you to that next level. Because honestly, if you are doing it in a way that's devious, it is going to catch up to you. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be 10 years from now, but it is going to catch up. And it's one of those things that when it does catch up to you, it's going to hit you so damn hard, you're not going to know what happened. Because the thing is, you have taken away the ability to be genuine, the ability to be authentic, the ability to understand how you need to look at something wholly and with your heart, with your mind, with the ability to know that you are making a change internally. And this is not some external thing for social media or for your friends or for your family or to pacify a situation or to stop the chatter. It's something that comes in from within. And unless it's done that way, it's not going to change. Or if you're just trying to do it externally, it's not. You're faking it. And that's the thing. And that's why accountability is so fucking tough. But once you start owning it, I feel like a housewife when I hear that word, owning it. But, and you guys know if you watch Housewives from which show. But it's one of those things that most don't do it. But we're doing it. And we're going to continue to do it. And it's going to make a difference. And it's going to make you so much wholer of a person by doing that and allowing you to grow and take you to the next steps. So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm going to leave you guys with the Charlieism, as we talked about, my father and his wise words. And, they're not, they're wise. They're just not always wrapped up in a pretty bow. And, I thought this one was, things he said to me often that kind of relate to accountability. And as he would yell this, he'd say, "It's your fault. Own it. Move on." And in so many words, making a very, very long story short, it is very true. Circumstance happens based, there's a reaction. Everything has, every situation has a reaction to it. It has led you to this point. And I'm not saying that it's your fault. And I'm not saying that it's just things happen. And owning it and moving forward through it is going to get you to those next steps of life, getting you to excel in life, getting you to figure out better ways to find yourself and find who you are and grow as a person. So he doesn't always say it in a way that's so pretty, but it's fucking true. But anyway, so again, that's accountability. And, I'm here for you. And I'm here to talk more about it. And I'm here to dive deeper into stories and examples and things like that. So, let's talk about it. So if you have any more questions, thoughts, topics you want to discuss, we can talk more stories, whether it's relatable to accountability or to anything else that's happening right now. I am here for it, and I'm here for you. So feel free to send me a DM at Finding Her the Show, or you can also reach out. We have a contact page on standinformation.com. But as always, please like, follow, subscribe, send to your friends, because we're here for you. And, I'm telling you, founders, we're here to find her. And I'll see you next week. Bye.